If you think wool was the gold standard for staying warm in the Second World War, you're not alone. That belief is everywhere in popular history, survival lore and reenactment culture. But buried in quartermaster reports, soldier memoirs and cold weather trials is a quieter truth that surprises even seasoned historians. Some of the warmest undergarments of the war were not wool at all. In brutal winters, from the Ardennes to the Eastern Front, armies quietly relied on a different kind of layer, one that trapped heat more efficiently, managed sweat better, and changed how cold weather clothing was designed for the rest of the 20th century. Let's get into what that layer was, why it worked, and how its lessons still matter today. Why armies began questioning wool before the war even peaked. By the late 1930s, militaries already knew wool had limits. It was warm, yes, but it absorbed moisture readily, became heavy when wet, dried slowly, and irritated skin during long wear. In static trenches, that was tolerable. But in mobile warfare with forced marches, mechanized units, and, rapidly changing temperatures, it became a real liability. Soldiers sweating during exertion would chill rapidly once they stopped moving. Quartermasters began searching for underlayers that could hold warmth without holding water, and that search, it led them away from traditional fibres. The World War II undergarment that quietly outperformed wool in extreme cold. The standout solution was pile-lined underwear made from rayon or viscose blends, sometimes mixed with cotton or backed with a smooth inner face. These garments were not outer layers and were never meant to be seen. They were worn directly over the skin or over a thin liner. Now, the key feature here was the raised pile, which was basically a fuzzy, fleece-like interior that trapped large volumes of still air. You see, warmth comes from trapped air, not really from the thickness of the fabric, and these garments, they really excelled at that principle. Rayon, which folks often called artificial silk back then, actually surprised quite a few skeptics. While it wasn't particularly warm on its own, when it was manufactured into a pile structure, it managed to hold air more effectively than even tightly woven wool. Plus, it absorbed less water into the fibre itself, so sweat could move outward instead of soaking right into the insulation. So, how did this layer actually work on a soldier's body? Well, when worn correctly, the pile layer created a sort of microclimate right around the skin. Sweat vapour would move into the pile, spread out a bit, and then escape toward the outer layers, rather than condensing immediately. This actually reduced evaporative heat loss, which, to be honest, was one of the biggest killers in cold environments. Soldiers reported feeling dry for longer periods, especially during that stop-and-go movement that was so common in combat situations. German troops, who were issued viscose-based winter underwear on the Eastern Front, noted that it stayed warmer during rest periods than the wool drawers worn under the same outer uniform. The United States actually tested similar designs for aircrew, tank crews and mountain units. Silk-like rayon underwear, when paired with pile liners, proved especially valuable in those enclosed or wind-exposed environments, where moisture management mattered just as much as raw insulation. So, why did wool lose ground despite its reputation? Wool's strength, really, is its resilience, not its efficiency. Once it gets wet from sweat or snow melt, wool fibres tend to hold water inside their structure, and that water, well, it conducts heat away from the body. In contrast, rayon fibres held moisture right on the surface, allowing it to move outward. This meant a soldier could march hard, stop suddenly, and not feel the immediate bone-deep chill that soaked wool often caused. How modern cold-weather systems still use this World War II lesson. If pile-lined rayon sounds familiar, well, it should. Modern fleece works on exactly the same principle. Synthetic pile that traps air while moving moisture outward is now standard in cold-weather layering. The World War II undergarment was, an early ancestor of today's mid-layers. The idea that your warmest layer doesn't need to be heavy or traditional came straight from wartime experimentation. How you can apply this knowledge today in practical terms. When layering for cold weather, prioritize structure over fibre mythology. A thin base layer that moves moisture, followed by a pile or fleece-style layer that traps air, will outperform a single thick wool garment in most active conditions. If you hike, hunt, or work outdoors, you might notice just how quickly you chill when you stop moving. That's really where pile insulation shines. Even in civilian settings, a lightweight fleece under a windshell often keeps you warmer than, say, a heavy wool sweater alone. If you're recreating historical kits or studying survival systems, it's important to understand that World War II soldiers were not relying on nostalgia. They used what actually worked under stress. That same logic, honestly, still applies now. So, test your clothing while you're moving and, also when you're resting. If you manage to stay warm without feeling damp, well, you're actually using the same principles that wartime quartermasters fought so hard to perfect. Now, why does this forgotten layer deserve more attention? History, more often than not, remembers what looks rugged rather than what performs quietly. Wool uniforms, they photograph well. Pile underwear, on the other hand, does not. But in foxholes, armoured vehicles and frozen forests, this hidden layer kept men functional when temperatures tried their best to shut their bodies down. It's a solid reminder, really, that innovation often happens where no one is looking, right next to the skin. If this deep dive added something new to your understanding of wartime survival and military history, make sure to subscribe to the channel, share this episode with fellow history buffs, and, well, keep digging with us. The most important lessons are often the ones history almost forgot.